By Tendai biti Wananchi, it has simply been a roller coaster of a year. One that will permanently redefine our political landscape. One that has permanently changed the way we look and view things, our world outlook. Former Finance Minister Tendai biti, a year that simply was on steroids. A year that left us grasping for breath and plunged us into depths of toxic delirium which many have never recovered from and sadly many will never recover from. Yet the tyrannies of change that swiped the motherland had the roots in the west of the continent and, in a way, would conclude in the west. It began with a late election in Ghana on the 7th of December 2016. That saw old friends of ours Nana Akufo-Addo and his running mate Mahamudu Bawumia and their new National Party defeat incumbent President John Mahama and his National Democratic Congress. That President Mahama accepted defeat and peacefully handed over power was a small piece of evidence that in the long term the acerbic reality that African leaders are only removed from power by death and coups is a threatened narrative. In Little Gambia a small miracle took place. A united coalition of opposition political parties under the moniker United Democratic Party had in December 2016 defeated Tin Pot Yahya Jammeh, who had seized power in a military coup in 1994. Despite an initial concession and true to form, Jammeh refused to hand over power on the 9th of December 2016. It would take the threat of military action by ECOWAS to persuade Jammeh to flee Gambia on the 21st of January 2017, thus allowing Gambia to enjoy its first ever democratic transition since independence from the British in 1965. Wananchi cataclysmic developments would also unfold in Angola, where permanent President José Eduardo Santos, who had been in office since 1979, stepped down and allowed João Lourenço to contest the August 2017 presidential election as leader of the MPLA. The little mountain kingdom of Lesotho claimed its small share of attention following 3 years of turbulence. Under Prime Minister Pakalitha Mosazili, a general election was held on the 3rd of June 2017 which was won by former Prime Minister Tom Thabane. That election was key in loosening the grip of rogue army generals on the state who acted under the clear direction of Mosazili. Wananchi, the winds of change hit Tadurawa in Kenya, where seating President Uhuru Kenyatta convincingly won a rerun election pursuant to the unwise pull-out by the opposition coalition NASA-led by Mzee Raila Amolo Odinga. The real game-changer in Kenya's never-ending electoral imbroglio was the ruling by Kenya's Supreme Court on the 1st of September 2017 nullifying the result of the presidential election held on the 8th of August. In a groundbreaking ruling, Chief Justice David Morange declared the election invalid, null and void, and ordered a rerun. It was unprecedented for an African court to unseat a sitting president, and certainly it won't be the last. Rwanda too questioned the matrix of elite transition whose precedents had been set in Ghana, Senegal, Gambia, Nigeria and Côte d'Ivoire. Wananchi. On the 4th of August 2017, an old friend Paul Kagame was re-elected to a third 7-year term with a whopping 98.7% of the vote. This is the kind of stuff that is manna from heaven to all departments of political studies throughout global campuses. Despite these setbacks, the winds of change continued to blow on the African continent. December 2017 would see the ANC of South Africa against all odds hold a successful elective conference that would see Cyril Ramaphosa become the new president of the ANC. That the ANC could survive the toxicity of a bitter fractious election and the avalanche of pre-conference scandal including the scepter of state capture is a remarkable testimony of its resilience. It started in the West, it would end in the West. On the 28th of December 2017, soccer star George Weah won a run-off election against a sitting vice president. This indeed was the first time in 70 years that power was transferring from one democratically elected government to another. Wananchi, the events described above can never be understated or taken for granted. In a cynical world where stability is the new buzzword, 2017 reminds us all about the sacrosanctity of democracy, about the fact that the ultimate sovereign authority at the people and that the right to choose to direct their affairs is inalienable. Wenanchi, but the story of 2017 must be Zimbabwe. Our Zimbabwe. On the 14th of November 2017, army tanks rolled into the streets of Harare and took control of all strategic points. In the early hours of the 15th of November, we watched surreal images from Zimbabwe's decrepit sole state-owned broadcasting house. A well-spoken army general, who in an act of brazen arrogance would later become the new foreign minister, announced to the world the execution of a replicating exercise that would later on be known as Operation Restore Legacy. The simple truth was that it was a coup, one which on the face of it had been planned for years. One which on the face of it was so well executed that even the old president half understood what was taking place. The image of Mugabe attending a graduation ceremony where he indulged in his favorite pastime of dozing off in the middle of coup will forever be one of the enduring memories of November 2017. Wenanchi it is, however, the 18th of November 2017, which we will take to our graves. On a bright Saturday morning, hundreds of thousands of Zimbabweans took to the streets of Harare, Bulawayo, Johannesburg, Pretoria, Cape Town, London and New York, demanding the immediate resignation of President Mugabe. That call and demand was not an endorsement of the coup, let alone an endorsement of Emmerson Mnangagwa, who would later on be sworn in as president on the 23rd of November 2017. It was a call for change. And change alone. We needed a break. President Mugabe and the system he presided over had suffocated us for too long. We needed to breathe. We had no illusions about the army and its dangers. That was tomorrow's fight. Today's fight was Mugabe. Wenanchi, for us in the opposition. For us who were there at the beginning. When we formed the MDC, this was the real final push. That we marched with the army was purely fortuitous, and a reflection of the deep elite rapture that had occurred inside the dark chambers of the securocratic state that Mugabe had presided over for the last 37 years. Of course, the deep contradictions in ZANU must be acknowledged fully. As the trigger to the 18th of November, the unresolved succession wars in ZANU had reached a point where they could only be resolved through physical implosion, which would leave only one faction standing. The toxic, crude and crass vitriol of Grace Mugabe was a torching moment. Her diatribe in Bulawayo and in Harare before members of the Apostolic Church was equivalent in impact to the assassination on the 28th of June 1914 of Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria, leading to the First World War. Whosoever killed a skunk and left it rotting in Grace Mugabe's mouth did her husband and the cabal no favor. Wenanchi, 5 years ago we had foreseen this, spoke about, wrote about it. We argued then as we do now that there was going to be an implosion and that only a national transitional authority could save Zimbabwe. Naturally no one listened. Thankfully Ibbo Mandaza, Tony Reela and my friend Brian Kagoro come to the party. With the reality of the coup now a permanent feature of our polity, the key question is what next for Zimbabwe? Wenanchi, the events of the past few weeks have shown beyond reasonable doubt that the coup was all about settling internal ZANU scores. Two factions were at war. One was outsmarted and outwitted, but it had the last laugh. It brought out the boys from the barracks, thanks to systematic years of state capture. More than that, the coup has resulted in the majestic consolidation of military control of the state. Wenanchi, the state has moved from the era of a veneer of civilian rule under the common model of party-state conflation to an elevated military state conflation. For all intents and purposes, ZANU to the political party is now absolutely irrelevant. What matters is KGVI, or rather Josiah Tongagera barracks and nothing else. More crudely, with the elevation of General Chiwenga as vice president and minister of defense, power is now a defense house in Kwame Nkrumah Avenue. Wenanchi, for those of us like Morgan Tsvangirai who have spent the rest of our lives fighting for democracy, the battle has just become steeper. How does an unarmed civilian structure through use of peaceful democratic and constitutional methods dismantle a military state construction well served by years of patronage and neo-patrimonialism? Put simply, how does Zimbabwe revert back to legitimacy, to normal civilian rule? So, Wenanchi, the search for our democracy continues. That search, as we have argued before, is waiting for Godot, an ongoing plot to find the solution. It may not be successful and will take ages to find. But 2018 is on us. We're Nanchi, we are internal optimists. 2018 must offer a chance for redemption. The new authorities in town must know that nothing other than absolute change will be good for our people. 69% of the population are vibrant youth, many of whom to know the inside of a workplace. They want real change. We saw them register to vote in the millions. We have lost a lot of time and we need to catch up. We are 4 decades behind South Africa. Our annual budget of $4 billion is the budget of Ekurhuleni town in the Gauteng. So we submit the following roadmap as a way forward. 1. The execution of genuine electoral reforms. 2. The holding of free, fair, credible elections. 3. The execution of an inclusive economic reform package centered on structural reforms. 4. The carrying out political and institutional reform, including pushing for devolution and concluding the land question. 5. The militarization of the state and the adherence to constitutionalism and the rule of law. 6. Resolving the country's debt. Question 7. International re-engagement. 8. Constitutional and legal reforms, including harmonizing current laws to the new constitution. 9. Addressing people's livelihoods, poverty and collapsed social infrastructure. 10. Restoring the social contract through program of national healing and a separate agenda for transitional justice.